Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. I know how difficult it is to find great books for your children to read, but that's exactly what I'm trying to help you with here at Holding Steadfast. So if you're searching the library, you're online shopping, you are in an actual bookstore, and you're trying to find great things for your children to read, I hope that you will subscribe and definitely check back here frequently, because my goal is to help you with that and give you great resources and ideas of books that you could do for family reads or things that you would want your children to read. And even sometimes I'm going to read stuff that I'm like, hey, probably should steer clear of this. So today's book review is actually going to be a continuation of the Kingdom series. So if you followed me from the last week, I gave a review of book 1 and 2. So today is going to be book 3 and 4. And this is a great series that's perfect for young readers or struggling readers or avid readers who just love those, the knights and sword fighting and all of those great details. The books are not very long. They're under about 200 pages each. And so there's great opportunities for discussions in any of these. If you missed my earlier review on the first 2 books, these books are an allegorical story where Chuck Black is trying to tie back to scripture very succinctly, but also to make it very accessible to younger readers. So book 3 in this series is called Kingdom's Edge. And in this particular one, again, we have this sort of frame novel. We have Cedric, who is the narrator, who has been relaying Lynaid's story in book 1 and 2. And he's now center stage, and the story presents his own journey. The story opens with Lynaid. He is now an old man, and he's conversing with Cedric and with his friend William. A few days pass. Cedric returns to check on Lynaid, but he is nowhere to be found. And this very special sword that Lynaid has been holding on to is gone. And so Cedric is very upset, and William's trying to help him sort of figure out what's going on. In the meantime, there is a stranger who has appeared in town, and he is just captivating everybody. When he speaks, everybody wants to listen, and the noble knights who are sort of in charge of the city, in many regards, they are not happy with this stranger, and they have even been called out by the stranger for their treachery and the misuse of their position and power. Eventually, Cedric and William get to know the stranger, who is actually the prince, and they commit their lives to following and learning from him. The prince trains them in swordsmanship and compassion, as well as the code. The noble knights hate the prince, and they're committed to killing him. And they are eventually successful. So just as a warning, so the prince is hanged in the story. And so that could be a little bit difficult or a little bit disturbing for younger readers. So just to make you aware of that he is hanged. When Cedric and William decide to go back and get the body because they want to bury it, there's nobody there. The body is gone, and they find that the people who were supposed to be standing guard have fallen asleep. Later, they discover that the prince has resurrected, and he has left them with a commission to go and train others in the code and in swordsmanship. They are to add to the knights through their work. More time passes, and a new leader has set himself up over Arathia as the new king and requires everyone to serve him. He wants them to bow to him, and they are to get his mark on their hands. Cedric, William, and Rob, of course, refuse, and they battle the king and the Shadow Knights. The king is actually none other than Lucius, who is the Dark Knight, essentially that satanic figure in the story. With the help of the prince's spirit and the training, the men are able to overcome their foes and the Dark Knight, and the men flee from Cedric and his friends, like the bad guys flee. From here, Cedric is awoken by a silent knight in the middle of the evening, or nighttime, I guess. Oh, silent warrior, I should say. So we have the Dark Knights, and we have the silent warriors. And so the silent warriors are like the angelic characters in the story series. And Cedric is awoken one night, telling him that there is a ship that has come to take him to the king's kingdom across the sea. Cedric is ecstatic. He rushes to the docks where he sees the prince in all his royalty and regalia. He and the others make it to the kingdom, and the story ends on the precipice of battle against Lucius once and for all. The prince is on his steed and leading the knights into the last battle. So even from that information, you can see a lot of parallels to biblical stories. The silent warriors are there to guide and assist the prince's people whenever they call. This can be an encouragement to young readers and young people in the faith to know that they should always be ready, but that there is someone, if they call on the name of the Lord, that help is there. Like I said before, it's fast-paced, and there's a lot in here. And again, there's great questions for each of the chapters to discuss. So I want to sort of mark a shift here because now we're going to get into book 4. And while I did enjoy book 1 through 3, I have to be completely honest and let you know that book 4, 5, and 6, at least for me, were way more engaging, and I enjoyed them way more than I did book 1, 2, and 3. And I think some of that is that those first 3 stories are very cursory and a very overview. And so there's a lot of information. It's very fast paced. But I think for me personally as a reader, you know, it sort of taught me or revealed to me a little bit more how I enjoy that sort of overdevelopment of a story and getting really in there. And so you're going to see in book 4 a really stark shift. So in book 4, this book opens really like the other one. Cedric of Chessington is narrating the story, and he's introducing sort of a bit of the story that he plans to tell. And based on where book 3 ends, you would expect that you're going to go into this big final battle in this particular book, but that's not actually what happens. The story that Cedric is relaying to the readers is that of Gavin, a noble knight. Readers will remember that the noble knights were not so noble in the last book as they killed the prince, an obvious parallel to the Pharisees and Sadducees of the Bible. Gavin was one of their order. The story opens at a similar scene that is from book 3, but now it's being switched, and you're getting another perspective and essentially picking up from that story, but you're going to take another train and going down that way. And so the particular story is when the prince defends a young girl from having her hand cut off. Only now the story, like I said, is told from Gavin's perspective. Gavin is outraged by the prince and his actions and his followers. And so from that moment, he is like committed to eradicating the prince and his followers as well. And he considers it actually his duty to do so because he lives his life for the king and for the code and the other noble knights. So obviously you can see that there's a parallel between Gavin and Paul. It is along a route to attack more followers of the prince that Gavin is wounded, and then he encounters the prince and then turns his life over and around to him. Followers of the prince are the ones that end up hiding him from the other noble knights, and they keep him and take care of him until he's well again. And once he's pretty much on the mend, he does receive a message that he's to travel through a very dangerous forest to the Crimson River. And through this endeavor, much is revealed to Gavin, and then the prince gives him a new name, Gavinal. And so that's pretty much where this story ends, is with him committing his life to Christ, but having this other experience where he's healed to some degree. He still struggles a little bit because he had a wound, a mortal wound, semi-mortal wound to one arm, but with the help of others, he's able to be healed. And then the prince, like I said, gives him a new name. So I actually really enjoyed this story. I liked the idea of being able to settle in to a story and get a lot more details that really captured the moment. That Gavin sort of changes his heart and his mind. And so there's a lot in the story. And just like the other books, you're going to get more of the questions and author thoughts in the very back of the book. Again, if you're looking for a family read, I know I've said this before, but this is a great book series that would be a wonderful, if my children were younger, I probably would have pulled this, and this would have been one of our nightly reads. We could have done a chapter a night. Some chapters are longer than others, so you may have to pace those out. But great themes, great ideas to talk about with your children. And as they're learning some biblical stories, you could even make those connections and those parallels. So if you're looking for another book series, I would definitely check this one out. And my next video will be for book 5 and 6.